The real story of the Boston Tea Party. Introduction. When most people hear Boston Tea Party, they picture angry colonists dressed as Native Americans throwing crates of tea into the harbor. But the real story behind this iconic event is deeper, more strategic, and far more important to the birth of the United States than most realize. This wasn't just a protest about tea. It was a bold stand against tyranny, and it helped ignite a revolution that changed the world forever. What was happening before the Tea Party? In the 1760s and early 1770s, tensions between Britain and its American colonies were heating up. Britain had won the costly 7 Years' War, also called the French and Indian War, and now it needed money, fast. So Parliament started taxing the colonies heavily, without giving them a voice in government. The most famous cry of the time was "No taxation without representation." Americans believed it was unfair to be taxed by a government in which they had no elected representatives. Several unpopular laws had already angered colonists, including the Stamp Act, 1765, and the Townshend Acts, 1767, which taxed goods like paper, glass, and paint. Although some taxes were repealed after protests, Parliament kept a tax on tea, just to show they still had authority. The Tea Act of 1773. In 1773, Britain passed the Tea Act. At first glance, it seemed like a good deal. It actually made British tea cheaper than smuggled Dutch tea. But the colonists saw through it. It gave the British East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in America. It forced colonists to accept Parliament's right to tax them, even if the tax was small. It hurt American merchants who were left out of the tea trade. This wasn't just about money. It was about control. Planning the protest. Resistance groups like the Sons of Liberty, led by men like Samuel Adams, began organizing secret meetings in Boston. They decided they would not allow the British tea to be unloaded, no matter what. Governor Thomas Hutchinson, however, was determined to enforce the law. He ordered that the tea ships, Dartmouth, Eleanor, and Beaver, stay in Boston Harbor until the tea was unloaded and the taxes paid. As days passed, the tension grew. December 16, 1773. The Boston Tea Party. On the night of December 16, 1773, a group of about 100 colonists, many disguised as Mohawk Native Americans, boarded the 3 ships. They worked quickly and carefully. In about 3 hours, they smashed open 342 chests of tea and dumped over 92,000 pounds, about 46 tons, of tea into the icy harbor waters, worth nearly $1 million today. Notably, they avoided harming the ships or any crew. They cleaned up after themselves, even replacing a broken lock. It was an act of political protest, not random violence. Word of the Boston Tea Party spread rapidly through the colonies and across the Atlantic to Britain. The British response, the Coercive Acts. Britain was furious. Parliament responded by passing the Coercive Acts, known in America as the Intolerable Acts, in 1774. These harsh laws closed Boston Harbor until the tea was paid for, dissolved Massachusetts' colonial government, allowed British troops to be housed in American homes, Quartering Act, increased royal control over the colonies. Instead of crushing rebellion, these acts united the colonies like never before. They led directly to the formation of the First Continental Congress and eventually the American Revolution. Why it still matters. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just about tea. It was a clear message. Americans would not submit to unfair rule, even from the most powerful empire on earth. It showed that ordinary people could stand up against injustice and change history. Today, the Boston Tea Party remains a symbol of protest, civil disobedience, and the fight for freedom. Conclusion. The real story of the Boston Tea Party is not just about a night of destruction. It's about courage, organization, and the birth of a revolutionary spirit. It set in motion a chain of events that would lead to the founding of a new, independent nation, the United States of America.